Hi, I'm Stephen Veach. We are exploring Earth science, and we are taking you with us. In this episode, join me on an epic adventure as we take a virtual tour of Cripple Creek, the world's greatest gold camp, where we will show you what the gold ore looked like, what the camp looked like back in its heyday, what it looks like today. We'll show you some current mining operations and a very special footage of an active blast at the gold mine. Now, join us as we explore Earth science. We're going to talk about Cripple Creek, and we're going to take you with us. But first, it's important to understand how it started. It was once just wide open country on the back of Pikes Peak. A ranch was established there, and a cowboy rode the range, and he also had heard of earlier gold strikes in Colorado. So in the late 1880s, he would ride around on that ranch looking for gold ore. One day he found a rock that was kind of unusual. He took it down to Colorado College in Colorado Springs to Professor Lamb to have it assayed. Professor Lamb told that cowboy, "You've got gold." The name of that cowboy was Bob Womack. This was about 1891, and a rush started to Cripple Creek. This is the very first photo known to history taken of Cripple Creek, 1891. You can see not much is there. There's a few little buildings that have been thrown up very quickly and some tents. Then, a year later, a city begins to emerge. There's more tents. People are moving in very fast. They don't have time to build. Others come in and do build. You'll see several hotels made out of wood. Much later, brick would come in after the first city of Cripple Creek burned down due to a fire. By the 1900s, the place was a huge metropolis, a huge city. There were more than 500 mines operating in the district. By then, it was known as the world's greatest gold camp. We are at the very edge of an extinct volcano that erupted, 32 million years ago. And it was a narrow pipe going deep down into the earth, almost to the mantle. It's called a diatreme. And it surged and vibrated and broke up rock and made cracks which became veins filled with gold ore. Cripple Creek started at about 1891. The district was formed, and within a few years it became known as the world's greatest gold camp. It was larger and more productive than any of the districts anywhere in the world. At its peak, about 1900, there were 500 mines producing ore in this area. There were at least 12 little towns in the Cripple Creek and Victor mining district. Out ahead, you can see some water tanks. There's two tan ones and one that's kind of an off-white. That's the city water supply. But that marks where there are several turquoise mines. Cripple Creek has some of the best turquoise in the world. It's very bright robin egg blue. It's very hard, very strong. It takes a very nice polish. This is another thing Cripple Creek is famous for. Not only is it the world's greatest gold camp, it is one of the best places to find turquoise. The view ahead is the city of Cripple Creek. Later, we're going to visit some of the other little towns that are throughout the district. This is the scene of Poverty Gulch, the discovery site that set the Cripple Creek mining district off, just like a volcano, just like an explosion. Down to our left is the Gold King mine, where the El Paso lode was located by Bob Womack. The El Paso lode eventually became the Gold King mine, and the head frame still exists. You can see that the head frame tilts. There's still a wheel at the top. It's called a shiv wheel, and that is what ran the cable from the hoist house up and down the mine, and at the end of the cable was a skip full of men, or they might put a donkey in there, or they could even put gold ore. Further away from the Gold King mine, but not that far away, is the cash on delivery mine, the COD mine that was operated by Charlie Tutt and Spencer Penrose. Penrose went on to develop the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. My grandfather was his personal private secretary until he died. Then my grandfather went to work for Julie Penrose, his wife, until she died. He also was her personal private secretary. The cement pad is all that's left of the COD mine. The COD mine was sold for $250,000 in the early days of the district. It was the first mine to bring in that much money. It was sold to a French mining syndicate. Tutt and Penrose went on to take their money and invest it in the Utah copper mines, where they made enormous fortunes. This is the Molly Kathleen mine. The ore sorting house, the historic original ore sorting house, is still standing. Next to it is a metal head frame which lowers a skip or man cage up and down the shaft to view the different levels. This is a tourist mine, and it will go down 1,000 feet. This was one of the few mines owned by a woman in the original heyday of the Cripple Creek mining district. More western side of Pikes Peak. On the other side is Colorado Springs. The riches of Cripple Creek would flow down into Colorado Springs, where many of the mining millionaires ended up living. This site is in the Cripple Creek mining district. There's an active mine called the Cripple Creek and Victor Mining Company, and they're up here right now preparing this hill to be mined. They'll be doing perhaps some underground work. They'll be doing open pit work. They begin by removing the trees from this hill. They give the trees to the people of this area to use as firewood. And they'll begin preparing this whole hillside for active mining. This site is the newest mining extension of the Cripple Creek and Victor Gold Mining Company. The trees have all been removed from the hill, and they're being delivered to people in Cripple Creek and Victor to use for fuel wood. This whole area will be mined.
What did they call the stealing of gold by the miners as they worked in the mine? Is it A, theft, B, high grading, or C, high walling? The answer coming up next.
Cripple Creek is Colorado's last great gold rush, only because the gold simply is not yellow and does not look like native gold. In Cripple Creek, the gold occurs in a mineral. The mineral is called a telluride. It is composed of gold and the element tellurium. Together, it looks silvery. You'll see that in these minerals. You'll see they appear as blades, silver blades. But the components that make up that silver blade is gold and tellurium. There are two main kinds of telluride minerals in Cripple Creek. One is sylvanite, first discovered in Transylvania, that's where the name comes from, and the other is calaverite. Calaverite is made up of gold and tellurium only. Sylvanite is made up of tellurium, gold, and for extra measure and extra fun, it's got a dash of silver. We're at the Wild Horse extension of Cripple Creek and Victor Gold Mines operations in Cripple Creek. They have several places they're mining. The Crescent operation is one. This is another one. They're preparing a third area for work. What you're looking at right now are rows and rows of little circles. That is a pattern that they drill down into the bench to examine the rocks that are underneath to see how much gold it's got. Then those holes are used also to put in explosives to blast and to remove that shelf or bench into a pile of rubble. It'll make it into rubble. Then big cranes will come and shovel the material into the back of trucks. Here's a view of that process. You can see a shovel working the debris of a bench that's been exploded. There were a row of holes going up to 40 feet into the ground where the explosives were put in. They were set off and it turns that hard rock bench into that rubble, and then the shovels pick it up and they'll put it into waiting trucks beneath. Then those trucks will leave this open pit area to a crusher, and the rocks are crushed to a much smaller size. And then they go on what's called a leach pad, where sodium cyanide is used to run down the outsides of the piles of those rocks to pick off the surface gold on each piece of broken up rock. Then the gold is recovered in a processing plant. Cripple Creek and Victor Gold Mining Company has been operating up here for a very long time. They started the Crescent project in 1994. This open pit operation is based on successive benching. They start at the top and they go down bench by bench by bench, exploding the rock, scooping it up and hauling it out. They leave behind these benches so that it all doesn't collapse in on itself. They were hitting fairly high grade ore here at 400 feet, and they continue to find good values in these rocks. There is a large haul truck working its way up one of the steep roads. They operate or drive on the left-hand side of the road so that they can see the edge at all times, rather than risk going off the road by driving on the right side. To the left of that haul truck are mounds of a grassy mound, and that is a stockpile of topsoil. So when the mine begins to create these open pits, they scoop off all of the topsoil and save it, because one day they will have to fill all this in and reclaim it, and that topsoil will be very valuable and important in reclaiming the hillsides and allowing seeds to take root and turn into grass, flowers, bushes.
What did they call the stealing of gold by the miners as they worked in the mine? B. High grading. Remember to keep it on the Earth Science channel for more facts and trivias.
Next, we have very rare footage of a recent blast an actual blast at the gold mine where the goal is to break up the rock, to get it to the crusher, to crush it down to a smaller size, get it out on a leach field where it is soaked with sodium cyanide water, which strips the gold off the surface of the rock. The liquid is then taken to a plant where the gold is stripped out of the sodium cyanide water. This is one of the best spots to see all of the rocks of the Cripple Creek district in one area. We're looking at a dynamite storage facility, a dynamite bunker. And this particular one is made out of all of the rocks in the district. We have igneous rocks, we have sedimentary rocks, we have Cripple Creek breccia, we have cyanite, we have a volcanic ash that's turned to rock, all at this location. The facility was built with very thick walls of heavy stone. The top of the dynamite storage shed had just 3 layers of bricks. This was built and designed this way in case there was an accident and there was an explosion. These thick, heavy walls prevented the explosion from going laterally, and it would funnel the explosion upwards through this weak domed roof. That way, the neighboring mines and mining operations and mills would not be destroyed. The destructive force, should there have been an accident, would go straight up skyward. This is a good example of the Cripple Creek breccia. A breccia is a rock made up of other broken rock. This rock was pulverized by volcanic action that put the gold here in the district. And the miners would always search for this type of rock, knowing that the gold would be concentrated around these chunks of broken material. These are called clasts. We have a variety of the darker igneous rocks, mainly cyanites, or tephrophonolite is the new term for that. There's also sedimentary rocks. There's beds of ash, and you can see the layers of the ash coming in here. There's sediments of ancient lakes that have been used, sandstones, for this construction. Here's even some Cripple Creek ore that's been through processing. They probably did not get all of the gold out of it, and this is probably a pretty good specimen for gold ore. More of the cyanites, more of the mafic igneous rocks, feldspars, granites, everything that's in the district is represented here in this dynamite storage shed. On this side of the dynamite storage shed, you can see that it was once covered with cement, a layer of cement, so you couldn't see these rocks. Over the years, the decades, the many decades, the cement has broken off through weathering, exposing these rocks. Above this thick, heavy wall, you can see the brickwork that made the roof. There's been enough dust and blown into some of the cracks of the bricks, and there's been some decomposition of the bricks to a degree that has provided enough soil for bushes and even a tree to grow out of the roof of this dynamite storage shed.
Why did the miners take a canary down into the depths of a mine? Was it to A. keep them company, B. chirp and break the silence, and lastly was it C. to warn of poison gas? Sit tight to find out.
Cripple Creek has many incredible stories. Some are well known, some are not so well known. This rock unit is one of those stories that's been shrouded in mystery and not well known. What we're looking at here is sandstone that was formed a very long time ago, and it was subjected to heat and pressure, and it became a metamorphic rock. The degree of heat and pressure was so high that part of it began to melt and inject itself into this sandstone, and that is what you see with this tabular layers. Sometimes they would swell up and be injected like a little torpedo running through this sandstone. This is more granitic. This is not, but it's from the same material, from partial or high-grade melting. And this is a melted part. Here you can see it swirl. A nice injection right through here. This is the sandstone that's been metamorphosed into a metamorphic rock. With more heat and pressure, this began to melt and inject through this sandstone. Here's another section of this outcrop where this material has been melted within this rock unit of the sandstone, and this layer of melt began to be pulled in this direction, and it would pop off these pulses. These are called boudins. The process is called boudinage. Boudin is French for sausage. So these are little sausages that are being created as this layer is being pulled this way. This feature at the same rock outcrop looks like a snake winding its way over the surface of the ground. This shows that the sandstone unit had melted to such a degree that the other part had melted even more and could inject itself in a squiggly fashion through this semi-molten sandstone.
Why did the miners take a canary down into the depths of a mine? It was, C, to warn of poison gas.
We're at a second site of this sandstone deposit that's been under extreme heat and pressure, metamorphism. Here is an example of something really cool. It's called a recumbent fold. You can see that part of this rock unit melted, and it melted into layers. At this site, the pressures in the rock unit made the layer of partial melt fold back on itself, and you can see it looks like the end of a paper clip. It's made that bend, a bend back over on itself, a recumbent fold. One of the lesser known stories of the world's greatest gold camp, Cripple Creek, Colorado.